Okay, we'll call a meeting to order. We're good. Good evening, Mayor Richard Stewart. On behalf of the City Council, I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. It's a public hearing into the bylaws that will be introduced in a moment by the Deputy City Clerk. Council for the City of Coquitlam has given first reading to these bylaws and directed that a public hearing be held. And staff from City's Planning and Development Department will first present a summary of the proposed bylaw for tonight. The floor will then be open to anyone in attendance that wishes to make his or her views known on the proposed bylaw. Those that are pre-registered will be given first opportunity to speak. This is a public hearing, an opportunity to make your views known. It's not a question and answer period. It's not an opportunity to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with council members, staff, or those in the audience who may be opposed to your particular view. Please restrict your comments to the proposed bylaw and please be as brief and concise as possible and refrain from clapping, booing, and cheering. As chair of this meeting, I reserve the right to conclude any presentation that does not relate to the bylaw, becomes abusive, or becomes repetitive of views that the speaker has already made known to council. If you have any written submissions, you need to submit them before we adjourn the item on tonight's council for them to be included in the written package to council members. After the adjournment of the public hearing, a regular council meeting will convene in order that the council may give consideration to the item on tonight's agenda. That's the only item we'll be considering. If, however, during the public hearing, council requests further information or wants to put off consideration of that item, council may do so. And I'll call on Ms. Lohr to introduce the item on tonight's agenda and the Planning and Development staff to make a presentation on the item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 1 is an application to amend Citywide Official Community Plan Bylaw number 3479-2001 and City of Coquitlam Zoning Bylaw number 3000-1996, and they're amending bylaws to introduce amendments to the city's industrial zones.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Raul Alireva, Manager of Development Services. The two bylaws before Council today are two city-initiated OCP and zoning amendment bylaws that pertain to the city's industrial zones. The city's industrial zones are being streamlined in a two-phase process with the objective of making them easier to administer, more flexible for users, and more responsive to changing business needs. The first phase is essentially a cleanup phase, and subject to council approval would then be followed subsequently with the second phase, which would be the more substantive phase in essentially the consolidation of 9 industrial zones into 3. The proposed text amendment to the zoning bylaw would add new and revised zoning definitions related to industrial uses to provide greater clarity and ease of interpretation, introduce a new parking standard, essentially 1 space per 100 square meters of gross floor area, which is the standard typically applied throughout the region, and eliminate the detailed list of permitted uses in each zone and replace these with essentially the new industrial definition. The approach would also allow new and emerging industrial uses not specifically thought of during the zoning process, zoning adoption process to fit with the industrial zones in the future. Finally, we would also advocate the elimination of density provisions in the zoning bylaw as measured by gross floor area, although the control on industrial development is essentially through setbacks and height. The OCP amendment bylaw, also before us today, is essentially to amend the Southwest Coquitlam Area Policy, CC20, to add the ability for council to consider rezonings on a case-by-case basis to permit convenience stores and service stations, in addition to restaurants, on industrial designated properties. Again, the general result of the proposed amendments are that all of the industrial zones are being simplified, existing uses are being recognized, and more importantly, while there is some slight adjustment of possible uses, no properties are being impacted by this process today in terms of removing existing uses towards the reconciliation of the zones in the future. Staff are recommending all final readings to bylaws 4234 and 4235. I can answer any questions you might have.
And we do have a question from Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. We received a letter from Port Metro Vancouver asking us to use some caution with respect to industrial offices. And it indicated that we're currently using industrial offices in M2, or that we're going to be M2, M3, M6, M8, and M9. It says, while such development is already permitted in some of these zones, it would be an addition in others. So I'm just wondering how many of those zones would it be in addition to?
I have seen the letter through the chair. I have seen the letter. Actually, there's some comments in there that are not exactly correct.
That's why I
the
was wondering.
industrial office the industrial office definition
Right.
limits the type of offices. It's not outright
I
general.
see that in
So that's
your
number one.
report.
That's critically important. The
Right.
industrial office is limited to a number of things outlined in the text amendments, including engineering and engineering
trade.
surveyors, a number of
Right.
limited.
Yeah.
And in fact, throughout the region, these uses are routinely allowed within even light industrial zones.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. Secondly, if you look at we have not made that kind of an amendment to our M1. It's important to note our M1 is our pure industrial zone.
Right.
So that's clearly we are trying to stay on side with trying to delineate our industrial, service industrial with some ancillary office and some more office type of industrial development. So we're staying within that categorization. Finally, the actual net effect of those amendments is probably to add a couple of, for instance, the M2 and M3 already include a number of the uses within the industrial office.
Right.
They're already in there. We're just probably, I think we're moving a couple into the M2, which are currently in M3, which
Okay.
includes engineering and consulting surveyors. So it's really minor.
Okay.
So there are some incorrect statements in that letter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I know the committee, Land Use Committee, has done a great work on this, and the chair of Land Use is the next questioner. May.
When he commented in his letter about being developed exclusively for office use, as far as I'm concerned, there is no exclusive office use in any of these zones. Is that correct? They're all ancillary uses.
That is, through the chair, that is correct. We are moving towards a situation where that might occur, and that's in the second phase of this program. We will then actually be breaking or actually consolidating zones, and then it's in that phase that we will be looking to potentially have standalone office within one of the industrial zones as a
Okay,
possibility.
well, that's something you and I disagree on, so that's okay. We can have that fight later. I love it. The fact that we're looking at ancillary offices, one of the problems was the amount of office space, and we have allowed them to have larger than 25% now.
Through the chair,
That's a big problem in our industrial areas.
Through the chair, the proposed amendments do not have that limitation. They do limit the type of ancillary
Correct.
industrial office, but they do not limit the percentage in a particular site to that.
Okay, so where we're going right now with this step, I want to make sure that there's no exclusive office would be allowed between the time you guys go from phase 1 to phase 2. Let's not slip through the crack here.
Through the chair again, yes, that is correct. The net effect of these amendments, and that is part of the second phase, which is it's a bigger policy piece.
That's okay.
That is where we would be moving towards a potential for one of the zones to have outright.
Because I don't want to see someone
office.
come in and say, well, here you go between phase 1 and phase 2. So we are protected for that, are we?
Yeah, there's currently some.
That's okay.
Yep. Keep in
I'll
mind, there
believe
could
it.
be a business that goes into an M2 and M3 that is exclusively a engineering surveyor.
Okay.
That is possible because that is actually an allowable industrial office.
Yes. Gotcha.
But it wouldn't be a general office, and it certainly wouldn't be retail. We've got some significant elements that we would not go beyond. In this case, this is simply a cleanup and allowing a number of those uses that are currently specified randomly through zones to actually be reconciled into definitions like industrial office.
Okay, thank you very much.
So it wouldn't be a lawyer, not a lawyer, accountant, those ones. Okay.
Exactly.
Perfect. Seeing no other questions, I open the floor to any people in the audience. We don't have any speakers, so go ahead. Are there any speakers to this item? No speakers registered. Are there any speakers to this item? Third and final time, are there any speakers to this item? Seeing none, I declare this item adjourned, and we'll adjourn the